Now, the show dedicated to rebuilding Washington, D.C.'s metropolitan housing and credit markets with the timely, trusted advice you need to make the right decisions. This is the Todd Laborowitz Show.
Good afternoon. As your friend and host, Todd Laborowitz, I'm privileged to share every Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. with you on the Todd Laborowitz Show, which is part of Real Estate Radio Network here on Salem Broadcast, WRC 1260 AM. And here with me in the studio is Sari Kurland, president of Kurland Law Group. And she is also a graduate of University of Illinois and Kent Law School. And today we're going to talk about the topics of short sales. And there's a lot of people that are doing short sales out there. You have real estate agents that specialize in it. You have companies that say, hey, we can help you. It's all over the internet. There's a lot of scams that are out there, which I'm not familiar with, but in my research, they're popping up. Be careful here. And the word short sales isn't something that's been around forever. It's a coined phrase pretty much that people started doing about 10, 15 years ago, and then it got really popular with the meltdown in 2008. But with you doing a loan modification and dealing with the banks, can you explain the difference of going to a lawyer versus going through a real estate agent and going through one of those companies on the internet?
With both short sales and loan modifications, our advice always is to seek legal counsel. Realtors shouldn't be negotiating short sales. They shouldn't be negotiating loan modifications. Maryland in particular came on real strong against companies that were doing loan modifications that were taking money up front and required what we call a credit business service license in order to negotiate a loan modification before, in order to comply, the company that's doing the loan modification cannot receive any money, any compensation until after the work's completed. So that pretty much got most of the scam artists, well, scam artists are always there and they're going to always be there, but most of the companies trying to do loan modifications out of the market. Lawyers can do loan modifications and can receive compensation when they're retained and while they're performing the work and performing the services and doing the work and before the case is completed. With short sales, realtors and most, certainly the larger, the real estate agencies that want to do the right thing are telling their agents, we don't want you negotiating a short sale. And Maryland law also was changed recently, I think it was last summer, to advise realtors not to be negotiating. They shouldn't be negotiating a balance that a homeowner owes. You're negotiating a debt. You're trying to resolve a debt, and technically that's a legal service that the realtor then is engaged in, and they shouldn't be engaged in. Realtors should be selling real estate.
Okay. So let's back up to what a short sale is. You're upside down on a property. You got to pay a real estate agent 6%. You got to do transfer tax. You're upside down with a lot of debt. And one way is to do a foreclosure, which has its consequences. Another is to do a loan modification, which has its consequences. But sometimes you just need to wash your hands and get out of that property. When do you know to go for a short sale, loan modification, or a loan?
It's not unusual that clients will come to us and try to do a loan modification who have gone other places before, and I'll sit down with the client and have that conversation. Like, even if we were able to modify, is this something you can afford? And if it's not, then I'll recommend a short sale. If they just can no longer afford it, and most people, when they get to the point, they have to be honest with themselves and say, look, I just can't do this anymore. I need to let the house go. I need to do the short sale. And I'm a big proponent of short sales because, one, it's good for the economy. Having abandoned, empty homes isn't good for anybody. It causes damage to neighborhoods and property values, and it's not good to just let homes sit and rot. So, and I'm a big fan of it because it's a wonderful way to avoid the negative consequences and the extreme consequences of bankruptcy.
Okay. Well, by the way, if you're just tuning in, I have with me Sari Kurland, president of the Kurland Law Group. I am your host, Todd Laborowitz, and you're listening to Salem Broadcast Network, WRC 1260 AM. Now, Sari, short sales. I love your philosophy because, yes, a foreclosure, the grass is going to grow, the weeds are going to get in there, the maintenance is going to be taken care of. Loan modification is another avenue, but a short sale, it's just a clean transaction. Now, a story of you were telling me about someone that you were just talking about this morning.
The phone always rings, and there's always another story. And the story today was a woman called me who was telling me that she had agreed to sell her home to some guy in the neighborhood who's supposed to be a reputable investor, and she moved out of her home. He promised her a certain amount of money from the sale of the property, but nobody did a lien search on the property, and nobody saw that there was a second mortgage. And all of a sudden, right before she's supposed to go to closing and collect her check, she said, well, I thought my bankruptcy discharged me from this debt. And I said, yes, it did, but the lien remains on the land records. And unless that's negotiated and resolved with the mortgage company, that short sale is not going to closing. So I said, had you called me, I wish you just picked up the phone and called me. I could have walked her through this and helped her avoid this problem had she called before today.
So she knew someone in the neighborhood, cut her own deal, thought she could save money by calling you, and
now it looks like she will probably lose most, if not all, of the money she had hoped to get from the sale of this property. And it's just sad. I said, why didn't you call? We'd been happy to help you.
Wow. So in her situation, if someone's trying to make a deal, it's always good to call and just get a consultation.
Just pick up the phone. This is usually something that we could figure out or resolve within an hour. Our fees are generally flat fee. So she would have, she had a lot more money in her pocket at the end of the day today had she done it properly.
Okay. Now, what kind of client, other than someone trying to sell a house to their neighbor, what are some key points that if any of our listeners are going through this, should give you a call? Like,
with respect to short sales, I just always look at what can I do to help somebody so they don't have to file for bankruptcy. Because anytime and you would know, Todd, if a client is selling their home to a short sale, they're going to be able to buy a new home sooner than they would had their current home go to foreclosure.
The recovery from a short sale is a lot easier than a foreclosure.
Easier than a foreclosure and easier than a bankruptcy. So if you can avoid foreclosure, you can avoid bankruptcy, you can do the short sale, you certainly will take a hit on your credit, but it's more of a blip because you can rebuild your credit a lot quicker from a short sale than you can from a foreclosure or bankruptcy case. If that's what your focus is have can I get out of this house? How can I sell it? I know I'm not going to get any money out of it, but if I can walk away with no debt, no deficiency balance, and then have my future to rebuild my credit, that's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's also call a spade a spade. I mean, 2008, we had the worst meltdown financial crisis ever, and it wasn't the fault of the homeowners. They did everything right. It's the fault of the situation that happened. So having a foreclosure, having a bankruptcy might be a personal thing that you went through a life change or something happened, but you can't help that your property is underwater by $100,000. That's not something that is your fault.
No, it's not your fault. And $100,000 is low compared to some of I was talking to a client today. He has a property in Upper Marlboro. He said on his block, there are other homes that have sold recently for $650,000. He owes more than $1 million on his property because he bought it at the height of the housing boom.
Right. And it's like, what are you waiting for?
He's waiting for principal write down in connection with the loan modification, but that's a push, and we're going to keep on trying to see if we can get that for him.
Okay. But what you're doing is, do you work with a lot of financial advisors to kind of balance out their situation?
We get referred often by financial advisors when clients just don't know where to turn, and sometimes most people aren't as proactive as they'd like to be. A lot of times there's some denial, there's some sticking the head in the sand. It's a rough situation to encounter. So just pick up the phone, call a lawyer. It's an easy way to start rebuilding.
Perfect. Well, what I'd like to do is offer you, our listeners, is the opportunity to get in touch with Sari Kurland, president of Kurland Law Group, and I can give me a call or text at 301-467-8444. That number again is 301-467-8444, and we'll go ahead and get you in touch with her. Even if you have just a question, it's just an inquiry, she'll sit down and talk to you. I mean, we're out of time right now. But Sari, thank you so much for coming in
welcome.
today.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we have Jim Brown, who's a realtor for Turning Point Real Estate, and also I'll let you know when we get back.
You don't go through life with a paralyzing fear every time you have a financial transaction. So why is applying for a mortgage so scary? At Topaz Mortgage with Todd Laborwit, it is about educating and empowering you to get from point A to point B. Todd provides you with his exact closing cost, best interest rate, then invites you to shop around. Plus, if you call with questions, Todd picks up with the answers. Learn more at whytopaz.com. They are industry experts that care. Topaz Mortgage, NMLS 131548, licensed by the Virginia State Corporation Commission, MC 5344, Washington, D.C., MLB 131548, Maryland 18330, Todd Laborwit, NMLS 131497.